Today we're going to talk about how Trump's inflammatory language following his guilty verdict is actually going to hurt him more, and I interview former ethics czar under President Obama and CNN legal analyst Norm Eisen about the likelihood of a prison sentence for Donald Trump, what it was like in the courtroom the moment the verdict was handed down, and whether he thinks this conviction makes subsequent convictions more likely. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So what's not really being discussed right now in the aftermath of Trump's conviction is how his reaction to this verdict is ultimately going to come back to bite him. So real quick, this is just a small sampling of what Trump's own comments have been in the aftermath of his conviction.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man. And it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace.
So it was the judge's fault, it was Biden's fault, it was immigrants, it was rigged, it was corrupt. Everybody else is to blame. Donald Trump is perfect, country's a mess, and he's going to fight until his dying breath. And let's be clear. This has been continued for days. Every opportunity Trump's had to get in front of a mic, he's attacked the judge, the case, the Biden administration, his mouthpieces, and his allies are doing the same thing. They're just rallying behind him and demanding retribution on his behalf. For example, here's Rick Scott and Stephen Miller, just to keep it at two people.
Well, first off, this is completely rigged. I talked to Trump last night. He is going to stand for all of us and fight like hell. Our job is to do the exact same thing. We have to be clear. We are fed up, and we're not going to take this anymore. So in the Senate, we're going to do everything we can to block any appointments of the Biden administration that we can. We're not going to fund any more programs unless it's tied to public safety. We're going to stop, and we're going to make sure there's no money for this lawfare against Republicans, including Trump.
I want every Secretary of State. Are you purging your voting rolls of non-citizens right now? Is every Republican state AG opening investigations into voter fraud right now? Is every House committee controlled by Republicans using its subpoena power in every way it needs to right now? Is every Republican DA starting every investigation they need to right now? Is every donor off the sidelines and in the game, the big dollar guys, the rich guys, the wealthy guys? Every facet of Republican Party politics and power has to be used right now to go toe-to-toe with Marxism and beat these communists. That's the task, Jesse.
And of course, some of them are out there calling for war. Literally, Tim Pool, some loser internet provocateur who has a big audience on the right, tweeted the word war. NBC News had a report out about how Trump supporters are trying to dox jurors and post what they believe to be their addresses online. That they're posting violent threats about jurors, about prosecutors, about the judge, calling for them to be identified, to be hanged, to be killed. And just like on January 6th, with all of that going on, Donald Trump's sole priority here is to continue to rile up his base by repeating these lies, repeating these claims that he's the victim of some unjust prosecution here, which of course is just egging these people on more and more. And so the natural progression of this is that there will be violence. I don't know how or I don't know when, but right now this is at its boiling point, and rather than let out some steam to cool things off by, I don't know, telling the truth, Trump is out there every single day repeating the same lies that got these people worked up in the first place. But here's where this is going to backfire. Trump hasn't been sentenced yet. That's not happening until July 11th. And you are kidding yourself if you think that Judge Merchan isn't paying attention to what's happening right now. Because, let's be clear, all Trump has to do is give the order to his little underlings to leave the jurors alone, and they would. And the fact that he's opting not to do that, but instead inflaming tensions with yet more lies about this prosecution, more lies about the judge and Biden and Bragg, is sending a clear message to Judge Merchan that, far from feeling any remorse or contrition, he actually revels in the mayhem. He wants it. He wants the violence. So if Judge Merchan is looking for a justification to sentence him to a period of incarceration, that is exactly what he's getting right now. Like, we're on the precipice right now. Either Donald Trump is properly held to account for his crimes, the ones that he's currently showing zero remorse for committing, or he gets a slap on the wrist, along with the confirmation, by the way, that he is above the law, and then he'll be emboldened 10 times over to do it again, knowing that this justice system simply is not prepared to hold him accountable for 34 felony counts. So that's where we're at. What Judge Merchan opts to do next is going to determine whether a lawless criminal gets to keep committing crimes with virtual impunity or whether he recognizes, finally, that he's not above the law. Like, we already know that Trump, for his part, he's not going to stop. He's showing that to us right now. So now we wait to see whether the justice system has what it takes to hold him to account. But that justice system has every bit of justification at this point that it needs to know that Trump is not only deserving of a proper prison sentence for committing the crimes in the first place, he's deserving of it beyond that because of the hostility that he's showing to the court in the aftermath of this verdict. Simply put, Donald Trump is dangerous, his whole movement is dangerous, and anything short of a real punishment is only going to embolden him even further. Coming up next is a preview of my interview with Norm Eisen, but first, just a reminder again that I have a new book out. It's titled Shameless. It's available right now for pre-order. It features interviews and insights from Jen Psaki and Pete Buttigieg, Al Franken. The foreword is written by Jamie Raskin. I'm really proud of the way it turned out. I'd love for you to buy it, so please follow the link right here on the screen or in the post description. You can check out briantylercohen.com/book, or you can just search for Shameless on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or at your local independent bookseller. Okay, here's a preview of my interview with Norm Eisen. Norm, we saw how difficult it was for the first prosecutor all those years back to hand down the first indictment, and then how quickly the subsequent indictments were to follow. So do you think that convictions are going to follow the same pattern, where the fact that that it took so long for a jury, for us to get to this point of conviction, that it'll make it easier to give something of a permission structure for subsequent juries when those trials move forward, for them to actually move forward with a conviction?
I do. The news of this case and the verdict was so loud that future jurors noticed it. The question is, when are we going to get those other cases? If you put the DC, the 2020 election interference case, next to the Manhattan 2016 election interference case, Donald Trump tried that bogus presidential immunity argument here. The judge gave it the back of the hand. The New York appellate courts refused to consider it. But Trump's enablers on the Supreme Court, they should have rejected it like all the other courts did, and fast. Instead, they're taking months. They've taken 5 months to consider whether a president can order political assassinations with SEAL Team 6. Give me a break. Alito and Thomas are acting more like Donald Trump's defense counsel. They're doing a better job than his actual defense counsel, Todd Blanche, did in the New York case. It's outrageous. Yeah. So when will those cases come is the question. But yes, I do think it moves the Overton window. What's acceptable? What's possible? Now we know, hey, a jury can hold a former president, accountable. And we didn't lose this. People thought about threats to the jury, the discomfort of the jury. We did not lose a single juror once the case started with opening statements. So that also sends a very important message that juries can hear and resolve these cases.
Was that part surprising to you? I mean, there was juror number 2 who kind of worried me because we found out that person got their news only from Truth Social and Twitter, which is not a good recipe for someone who's looking for accurate sources of information. I don't generally, wallow into the or find myself, in the depths of Donald Trump's own. Basically, I mean, I think now we realize that it's just a laundromat for him to wash money from, so that he can eventually take money out against his Trump media stock or borrow against it. But in any case, don't really find myself there if I'm looking for accurate information. But did that part surprise you, that even that juror voted to convict Donald Trump on all 34 counts?
It did not surprise me. And my view is that juries really work hard and they want to do the right thing. Sleeper juries are an extremely rare phenomenon. And in the case of juror number 2, it's true that he follows Trump on Twitter, just the posts that are reposted from Truth Social. Yeah. But he also follows Michael Cohen. He follows Mueller, She Wrote, my friend Allison. Yeah. And, works in investment banking and wants to follow anything that might affect the markets. Look, my soul did a lurch when I heard the words Truth Social, But juror number 2 was fine. Juror number 2 was not the juror that those of us who were in court every day were worried about. There was another juror. The court's order prevents me from identifying who it was. The court asked us not to identify jurors, who I was very anxious about, because this juror would not look at the prosecution witnesses like it was looking everywhere else in the courtroom, even looked at me a couple times. And I did not think look at me in a very friendly way. But gradually what I observed over the course of the trial was that that juror became more and more engaged. And I was convinced by the end. I told the others, about 60 reporters in the courtroom every day, I told everybody, I know how to read jurors for a living. Don't worry about that particular juror. We were all worried. We all saw it, but it turned out obviously unanimous.
To watch the full interview with Norm, click the thumbnail right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also click the link on the screen to listen to the audio version of this episode, and of course to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.